All right, well, thank you for coming over and being here today. I apologize, my voice is a little froggy. I have had that like 20-week cold that everyone has had this winter, so I promise it's just leftover. But I'm Vanessa Eric Hardy, and I am going to be moderating this panel today. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background about how this all started. So the city of Davis is lucky that we now have an economic development. Was that me? Oh, on staff. And it presents, was it? Every time I say P, I feel like it just did that. And it gives us some great opportunity to really look at what we want to be when we grow up in Davis, and have someone kind of dedicated on the city side to doing that full time. We have a lot of people in this room who are interested in shepherd these ideals all the time. And so I think so much has come together with Katie being on board. The Chamber, of course, has always been interested in what does Davis want to be when it grows up, right? I think that is our mission defining question. How do economics and the city of Davis, how does that all look together, and really in a holistic way, right? Like, how does this whole ecosystem of a city contribute to economics? And we have our members who are a lot of business leaders in the town, right? But the ecosystem is very important to business leaders as well. People that work in town, do they live in town? People that have it are short on resources in town, how can we help them so that we all thrive together? This is all interconnected, and at the Chamber we really realize this, and really appreciate the opportunity to come together. And so we've been working over several months to bring an economic development series to people in the city, led by the Chamber as a joint effort between the city and the Chamber, as part of our MOU that we've had for many years with the city. And we've decided together over many hours, Katie and Carrie, Mike Webb can attest, that our pillars really should be business development, housing development, and job development. And so today, for our first installment of the series, we're going to start with job development. I'm Vanessa Eric Hardy. I am on the Chamber board, and my kind of job on that board is economic development. So I am just a volunteer shepherding this along. And I have a panel of experts here, which I will introduce to you in a moment, all with a specific regional area of expertise. So I can't wait to get into it. I am a marketing consultant by trade. I have a little firm here in Davis. We do regional work. And then I also teach at UC Davis. I teach at the Graduate School of Management, both digital marketing and brand management. And so whenever I start a class, I always tell a couple of really bad jokes so that hopefully we can only go uphill from there. So we just had the state of the city. And so my first joke is about parks. Why did is it the chicken, not the turkey, cross the road? Why did the chicken cross the park? This is actually my 8-year-old son joke. Just say it.
To get to the other slide.
Yeah, to get to the other slide. But he says it so cute with his lisp. He goes, to get to the other slide, mommy. And then you laugh, and it's so cute, and I hope he never grows up. Okay, and then I have like a money joke. So when does it rain money? When there is a change in the weather. I know, yeah. Okay. Good. Now we'll go uphill. Yeah. So, time to introduce these wonderful people on the panel. So we have Katie Yancey, who I just said is our Economic Development Director for the City of Davis. She's working out of the City Manager's office. She worked as a Community Investment Manager for quite a chunk of time for the City of West Sacramento in their Economic and Housing Department before this. She was instrumental in the Riverfront and Central Business District development, and she has more than 20 years working on these types of endeavors, economic development. All right, round of applause for Katie. And Kelly Fong Rivas. Kelly works in local government relations at UC Davis, focusing primarily on local county. She has also had quite an experienced career in the area. She has worked for the city of Sacramento for Mayor Darrell Steinberg in his office. She's also worked at the federal level as a political consultant. She's also worked on things like congressional campaigns and served as deputy and press secretary and a field director for Congressman Ami Bera. And let's see, what else here? She is a founding member of the Global Shapers Sacramento Hub, which is a worldwide community of young leaders selected to represent their cities within the World Economic Forum. How am I doing without like totally looking like I'm reading here? All right, awesome. Next, we have Renee from Valley Vision. And Renee Johns is Managing Director at Valley Vision. Many of you have heard of Valley Vision. If you haven't, it's a nonprofit civic leadership organization dedicated to improving lives in the greater Sacramento region. Before Valley Vision, Renee dedicated 10 years to leading initiatives at a direct service nonprofit organization, including workforce training, community support, youth, financial empowerment, refugee, and English learner initiatives. And her guiding force every day when she goes to work is to ensure that all community members have access to opportunities and live healthy and fulfilling lives. All right, let's welcome Renee. Then we have Jennifer. Jennifer is the Dean of Sacramento City. Well, we have Dr. Jennifer Laughlin. You worked very hard for that, and I don't mean to skip right over it. Jennifer serves as the Dean of Sacramento City College, Davis and West Sacramento Centers. You may have seen Davis City College located in West Village, the Davis Center of Sacramento City College. Of course, we know that we have many education and science courses offered at Sacramento City College and STEM degrees. Both the Davis and West Sac Centers connect students to career education certificate programs in high demand fields like healthcare and manufacturing. Previously to coming to Sacramento City College, Jennifer served as Dean of Institutional Effectiveness and English faculty at American River College. All right, let's have a round of applause for Dr. Jennifer Laughlin. And then finally we have Troels Adrian, and Troels Adrian is the Executive Vice President of the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. He leads business development, marketing, research, and strategy. That's quite a big job. Prior to this, he has been involved in the creation of over 13,000 jobs throughout his career. Prior to joining the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, he led tradable sector economic development activities for the city of Portland. That's a mouthful. He has a lot of education. He has a couple master's degree and a bachelor's degree, all in the area of regional development, public administration, and has won some awards too for his research. Let's welcome Troels. All right, so the first question that I want to lead in with today is just that obviously we brought a diverse panel to you. We have people from many different parts of our region representing many different types of sectors. And so let's ask our panelists a question related to that. Why is regional economic development so important, right? So first I'm gonna start with Katie. And just as a time check, we're gonna try to keep each question to around 10 minutes so that we have time for Q&A. I'm gonna name someone to kind of kick off our answers, and they'll speak for about, I would say about 4 minutes per primary answer, and then we can pass it around the panel. And of course, I'll cut things off if we start to approach more than 10 minutes per question. Okay, so my first question for the panel is, this year's City Council strategic goals include stepping up economic development activities. Like I said, lots of people working on these initiatives here in our city. Why is job creation important to the city's economic development objectives, and how will it affect the existing business in the community?
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking extra time to listen to our first economic development panel. I really appreciate you giving this time and attention to this topic. So as the mayor mentioned, during the State of the City presentation, I have been charged with doing an economic development strategy for the city. And the main focus of that economic development strategy is to grow and diversify the revenue that are coming into the city. When we think about the various different marks that they've asked me to achieve in developing this economic development strategy, one stands out, which is to improve the jobs housing balance. Now, jobs housing balance is really, first and foremost, an issue related to commute and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. About 60% of the trips that are happening in Davis start in Davis and end in Davis. That includes UC Davis when we give that statistics. So 40% of those trips that are occurring are either people like myself who don't live in Davis but come to work in Davis. It's a pleasure to do that. Or people who live in Davis and are leaving Davis to go to work. And these are weekday statistics that I'm giving you. So jobs housing balance is all about reducing that number. It's finding a way to either get more people who work in Davis wanting to live in Davis, or it's about getting more people who are driving, who are driving out of Davis and get them jobs that are in Davis. So we're trying to reestablish a better number and bring that number of 40% down. And so why is that tied to jobs creation? Well, there's two factors that go into that. The council talked a lot about, the city talked a lot about the work that's being done in the jobs market. We will have another panel to talk about work that's being done, on the housing market. But we wanted to talk about the jobs market first because, as you can see, there are several housing products that are in the pipeline. We have over 900 that have been permitted and are looking for financing or in the development approval process. If our 2 annexation projects occur, we'll have another 3,000 in the pipeline. So the market is definitely doing the work necessary to address some, not all, of the housing market side of the jobs housing balance. And so this panel is here, and part of my job is to figure out what to do about the jobs market side. So a little information about the jobs market in Davis that I wanted to share with you all, and I had to get my numbers because I won't remember all these statistics. So the Davis population is about 65,000 people, and our civic city labor force is 35,000 people. When you look at all the different job types that we have in Davis, over 75% of them are in the service industry. So less than 25% of them are in something that you're producing, you're creating a ware, a trade, you're manufacturing something that potentially could generate sales tax. And so we do not generate here in Davis a lot of product types that could encourage something called business-to-business sales tax. And that's a key part of diversifying the fiscal solvency of the city, is finding other ways to collect additional revenue that's not about, and we're grateful that the sales tax measure approved, but we need to find other ways to bring additional generation of revenue in. So bringing in jobs, bringing in companies that produce goods that can be bought and sold, and that can eventually incur in business-to-business sales tax is a really key function of, one, the jobs housing balance, because, as I said, 75% of the jobs here in Davis are primarily service-oriented. And of the labor force that's engaged in Davis, the 35,000, 25,000 of them are white-collar jobs. And so we have a very small percentage of blue-collar jobs here, and those are the kinds of jobs that typically produce and manufacture things that can be bought and sold. And so in an effort to look at how we might move the needle there, part of the work that the city is going to be asking me to do is looking at how we can slightly change the job market to, one, find jobs for the sort of medium income worker that we're looking to attract through our affordable housing programs, find jobs for those people, find so that we can reverse the commutes, and also find ways to invest in tradable sectors. And so those are some of the main reasons why we're focusing on job creation as part of the larger economic development strategy. There are other components, but that is the sort of the why behind why that would be occurring.
Awesome. Anyone have anything to add about this kind of reshuffling here? Maybe Trolls, I'm thinking.
Yeah, sure. I think also the question was a little bit about regional economic development, right? And how that's relevant to the conversation today. I think Katie mentioned a really, really important statistic, and that is Davis relies a lot on other communities for job creation for Davis residents, and vice versa. Other communities around the region rely a lot on the city of Davis for their job creation. And so what that means is we're all in the same boat together. And so I work for a regional organization, right? And I do that for a reason. That's because I believe in regionalism as the key sort of level that you need to look at for economic development strategy that really affects the overall economy of an area. Basically, if you've got 40% of your population commuting out every single day to jobs outside of the market, you are putting that the success, if you will, of those folks in the hands of others if you're not participating in that environment, right? So we as an economic development organization, we have 22 communities from around the region who are on our board of directors and who are invested in a regional economic development strategy, including the City of Davis, and I want to thank the City of Davis for that investment and for that activity, and Councilmember Dios is on our board of directors, and so that's really, really critical, because that means that you can work together with other communities around the marketplace to drive change and to drive success in the market. The other piece that's about it is, and we'll talk about this in a bit about the tradable sectors, but when people look at the greater Sacramento market, or when people look at coming into any community here in the marketplace, they look at the regional level first. And they do that for two reasons. We already talked about the first one, which is, of course, the flow of people, right? They want to know where their labor shed is. Typically, we see a company looking at coming into a location. They take a 45-minute view of where their labor force is going to come from. And that usually crosses anywhere from 5 to 10 jurisdictions, depending on where you are in the market, right? And what that means is you're all in the same boat as you're trying to help businesses grow or attract business. Because this happens for existing companies as well, right? If you're an existing company, you're looking to add 50 people. If you can't find those 50 people within the 45-minute radius of where you are, you might start looking elsewhere in the marketplace to get that. The other piece is something Katie also alluded to, which is around goods procurement and goods and also selling goods, right?
Just be really careful, because the next question we're about to talk about tradable sectors.
Yes.
So I have to warn you, you're going to be on my next slide.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
All right.
And I'm not
Keep
getting
going.
to the, I'm
Continue.
not getting to the
Okay.
tradable sectors
Got it.
yet.
Okay. All right.
This is for any business,
Okay.
right? This also goes for a retailer, right? If you're operating a small retail shop, your people are coming from 45 minutes to an hour away or up to 45 minutes to an hour away. It also involves selling and procurement of goods, right? If you're a company in the City of Davis, if you're a retailer in the City of Davis, I took my kids here a few weeks ago. We went and had milkshakes in downtown Davis. I don't know what's happening. Do we have we have, and it's like there's a chopper coming or something. But in any case, we came from the City of Sacramento, right? We brought in dollars into the community that way. So I want to stress that basically boundaries for business are not municipal, they are regional. And I think that's a really, really important thing to consider as you're also evaluating and building your own economic development strategy. And that happens regardless of the company we're talking about.
That's really interesting. When we all walk away and remember 10% of what we heard here today, I really like thinking in that way of boundaries for business are regional, not municipal.
And the myth of the self-contained city has been debunked several times, that it's not possible to sort of attempt to do economic development within your own city. There are too many of these porous boundaries that occur. I mean, several people that live here in this community shop in other communities that are adjacent, and those communities shop here.
Absolutely.
And so this idea that we are attempting to strengthen our relationship, we are attempting to sort of create a full service city, an 18-hour downtown. We are trying to do all of those things. It's not saying to give it up in the idea that we can't be a self-contained city, but it is recognizing that if we are focused on, and one of the objectives that we have is to improve the jobs housing balance, to what I was saying earlier, is that it's really all about reducing those commute times, taking the pressure off of our very precious infrastructure, alleviating that congestion, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which are core values of the City of Davis. And those are expressed in their climate action and adaptation plan. But this is where those values become economic realities, and we're trying to create those environments that not only lift the fiscal status of the city, right, create additional revenues that are coming in that are a little more resilient to things like COVID that happened, right, where services are no longer really being provided in the same way that they were, and yet people are still buying goods and services. So goods and tradable goods, right? So we wanted to sort of create those additional redundancies in our economy. But all of this is intertwined. And I guess that's the main message that I would leave, is that it's not just geographically intertwined. So many of the topics that we will be covering in our future ED series will be sort of flowing from one into the other. And ultimately what you're going to hear.
We have regularly scheduled commercials
Yes.
for our series in this
Yes,
presentation.
I think what you're going to hear is that, and from this panel, is that it all has to be done in partnership with each other. So I just wanted to riff off of what Troll said.
Okay, all right. Valley Vision, I want to hear from you on this as well, and I'm going to come back to this on question 3 to get some more info from you about your thoughts. Do you have a few thoughts that you'd like to share before we move on to Q2 though?
Yes, I want to build on what Trolls
Mhm.
and Katie said, and specifically when you're talking about business attraction to your region or to your city, they're not just thinking about the city of Davis. It's kind of the broader regional reputation, and GSEC is doing a lot of work on this to help improve and build the reputation of our region, and so that is something else to consider. So even if within your city bounds, let's say everything was absolutely perfect, but just outside it, it's not, that does affect you, and it affects the ability to attract businesses into your region. So I think what Trolls already emphasized was you have to have the labor force for it. So that is also a big concern to businesses for attraction, but also what do they think of when they hear your region? If a company is thinking to locate here and they could locate in the nation or globally, what would make them make a decision to locate here? It's going to have something to do with our regional reputation. So we're all are actually in this together.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure our education partners can vouch. We have people for those jobs. Would you like to add anything, Jennifer, and then Kelly?
Just briefly that, so I'm from a community college, and the mission of the community college is to ensure a better life for the students who choose to go there. And the way that we do that is by supporting their skill development and knowledge development to get good jobs. So I won't say much more than that, but that's, really what my voice is here to represent, is that all of the ideas that you all are discussing, bringing industry here, that's only going to be viable if there are folks here on the ground living here who are trained to work in that industry and to stay in it over time. So that's all I'll say for now.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. And hopefully, I know our microphones have been a little bit light, so I'm going to just use it right here so you can hear me, and hopefully in the video as well. One of the things that we do know, right, is that higher education attainment helps improve your income over lives, and for that of the area as well. And one of the great things that we have here, and actually I will give a quick shout out to our Career Center, is that 80% of our undergraduate students are participating in externships, internships, and we are launching an undergraduate major, business major as well, and that really is going to be important because we need places for those students to be able to go get hands-on experience in the local community, and they're not going to be traveling too far as they live here in Davis, go to school in Davis, but finding that connectivity so that they have places to go when they graduate as well are going to be essential within our region. Even if they don't stay directly in the city of Davis, different places around here, we see that really helping our whole region grow.
Shout out to that undergraduate business major. All right. Very good. Thank you all. So next question I have, and I'm going to start with Trolls, is we just heard that increasing jobs in the tradable sectors of the economy, you introed that very well without giving us too much info. We just heard that those tradable sector jobs will likely be the focus or a focus of the city's economic development strategy. What are tradable sectors? Can you just give us a quick 101? And are there any key tradable sectors for the region? And then finally, why are they necessary when pursuing economic growth?
Sure, happy to, yes. And as you mentioned, I used to have that in my actual job title, so I should probably know what it is, right? So fundamentally, tradable sectors sound so dry and sort of academic, if you will, but really there's lots and lots of different companies, lots of different firms out there. But there's one slice where you can say there are fundamentally two kinds of businesses in the world. There are those that bring in new dollars into a community, And then there are those that take the dollars that are brought in by the first kind and circulate those within the community. And that's how you create a well-functioning business ecosystem, if you will, in a regional marketplace. So, and by the way, this occurs at the regional scale. Again, this is not a local versus, it's not sort of a Davis, West Sacramento, Woodland, Sacramento thing. It's the greater Sacramento marketplace. So the first kind, the companies that are bringing in dollars and bringing in resources into a region, those are the tradable sector companies. And they're fundamentally different from the other kind, which are your local serving companies. So those are going to be your retail stores. Those are going to be restaurants, local service providers, the hair salons, people who serve the local population by and large, all right? And there's a really important distinction between those two. It's not just about where the dollars that they generate come from. It's also, they as a result compete globally, right? If you are a DMG Mori, let's take one example here in Davis. DMG Mori is the world's leading company in machine tool technology. So basically they make the machines that make virtually everything that is manufactured out of metal in the world today. They have about, I think, 18% global market share. They have their US headquarters in Davis. Incredible company. We had a chance to visit them with the city of Davis a few weeks ago. They do a lot of their R&D there. They are not, I mean, what percentage of their machine tools are they selling in the greater Sacramento region? I mean, it's probably much less than 1%. Where do they sell those machine tools? All over the world, right? So when they decide where to locate a business or locate a business unit, it's not about the local customer base. It's about the local workforce partnerships. It's about the local business climate. And it's about the opportunity to engage with, say, local academic institutions like UC Davis. So it's very logical for them to be in Davis, right? They have access to some of the best engineering and science talent in the world. They have an incredibly high quality of life. They have community colleges that are supportive, right? There is access to customers, not just in the market here, but up and down the West Coast. And they can also fly from here to Germany or to Japan. And by the way, that's another piece. They're part German, part Japanese. There is a 9-hour time difference to Europe, which, trust me, I was on a call at 7:30 this morning with some Germans. It's not always fun, but that was during the workday for them. And you could actually be on a call with Japan the same day during the work day for them as well. So there's a lot of companies that are co-locating, if you will, if they're managing both a European and an Asian location, they have a very good location on the West Coast, right? So all of this confluence of factors creates the business climate, if you will, for a tradable sector company. Now, what is the connection to the local economy then? Well, those folks go out to lunch, of course. They go and they spend their dollars in local retail stores, et cetera. And the company spends its dollars on training, on catering, on travel. I mean, I don't know exactly how many hotel nights these folks generate in Davis, but it's probably a lot, right? I mean, they've got customers flying in from all over the world to come visit and to co-create with the people who work and live there, who work there. So that's what's called the multiplier effect for a tradable sector company. And depending on what they do, that multiplier effect can be anywhere from 2 additional jobs created by the one job that's created in the company, all the way up to 5. The highest multiplier effects we know of are R&D in the semiconductor industry, which we're very fortunate to have quite a few of here in the market. That's a 5 multiplier. So every job that's created by Intel in Folsom generates another 5 jobs in our region, which is an absolutely massive impact. That's super, super important when you think about, and this is the nexus to why it matters for regional economic development. On a bang for your buck scale, there is nothing more impactful than recruiting, retaining, and expanding a tradable sector company, because it generates so many more jobs in the surrounding economy. Now, then at the same time, and I do want to mention this because some people often go, well, we should focus on tradable sectors and not the local, or vice versa. You actually have to do both, and that's where local economic development comes in, creating a strong quality of life and creating a strong local retail and vibrant retail sector helps that dollar circulate for a longer time within the region, but you still have to have a strategy, and you still have to have a posture that can attract dollars in, because otherwise your local retail and service supply chain is going to start getting choked off, right? So hopefully that was your tradable sector 101 for the day. So
Awesome. And you covered a lot in that too. You covered how they grow the area economically and why they're so important for pursuing growth. So thank you. It's interesting. Semiconductor R&D. I have 2 students this quarter that were highly involved in R&D of the chips, and I've never had such specialized conversations with people. I find it fascinating.
Well, I can actually give you one quick statistic that can illustrate just how powerful this is. If you apply that math, so I worked in the city of Portland for a few years, as mentioned. Portland, Oregon, the region, has about 23,000 semiconductor jobs. Most of those are directly related to, or most of those are Intel. If you apply that multiplier effect, so again, it's a 4.5 to 5, depending on the details, you're looking at anywhere from 110 to 125,000 jobs in the greater Portland market that are directly or indirectly reliant on Intel. That is 12.5% of that region's economy.
Yeah.
So that gives you an indication of just how powerful tradable sector jobs can be for driving. And so, yes, they brew a lot of great beer out there. There's some amazing restaurants. There's some amazing retail stores. There's amazing stuff in Portland that's driven by those dollars that are coming in from the Intels and the Nikes and the Adidases of the world, et cetera.
And if I can
So
add-
in other words, we might say that tradable sector is the chicken and really good breweries are the eggs.
I'm totally down with that.
Yes.
And we could all use some more eggs these days.
There we go.
They're very expensive.
There we go. Katie, I know you want to piggyback briefly, and I wanted then to go quickly to our education partners as well. So go
Yeah, I
ahead.
just wanted to comment that I think one of the things I forgot to mention in my first question was that I think everybody here, who's familiar with Davis would say that we don't have the egg problem. We have a lot of great amenities to offer in Davis. We've got a downtown that's vibrant. We have lots of green spaces. We have great schools. And so I think the issue here is that we don't have enough people enjoying and consuming them and having the workforce that can fully appreciate that and then circulate the dollars around in the local economy. So I just wanted to contribute that little observation to what Trolls was saying.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the workforce, we have 2 very different populations in, of course, UC Davis and Sacramento City College. And Sacramento City College, I want to start with you. So you have a lot of probably more local workforce that are fueling the region, and then of course we probably have more coming from other places to fuel the region. At UC Davis, how does this interact? What role does Sacramento City College kind of play in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I really like the framework that you set up, Trolls, with tradable and non-tradable sectors. And I can just explain a little bit about how Sacramento City College programs, career education would fit into developing a workforce for both those sectors. So, a student can go to Sacramento City College and on a short-term basis get the training they need to leave and then get a job in an industry where they would be making more than if they had no education. So we have programs such as mechanical engineering technology. Those are students who leave and they can make systems like HVAC systems, refrigeration systems, design them, repair them, and maintain them. That's a kind of worker that you need to work, that DJ Mooring needs with those types of skills that make things happen inside the industry. Then at the same time, we also have students who are early childhood education students, or students who I work with in West Sacramento who are optical technician students. So, these are folks who are going to be able to leave their program in 9 months and get a job working in a glasses store where they're fitting you for your glasses and making them for you. And that's the type of worker that we need to have the environment that you're talking about, where people who are drawn to the region for these larger companies and even universities can then live in the community and be well served. And the people serving them or working in those industries are also making a good wage and then contributing back into the economy. So just a little bit there about how the community college fits into this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're so lucky in California to have our community colleges system and the place that a very bold place that it fits into the workforce and market. Go ahead.
Truly, I think community colleges are fantastic avenues for so many people to be able to attain those types of degrees that can get them those jobs with semiconductors, to get into UC Davis and our College of Engineering, which...
And I will say transfer students are some of the most studious students I've ever had, so please pass it on.
Absolutely. So impressive every single time that I speak with them and about their stories and what brought them, honestly, to this community in particular, right, are the incredible reputations that we have, both as a community and as a university and a research institution. I think recently in the last quarter, we released some numbers that showed for the third consecutive year, we brought in $1 billion in external research funds, right? That's primarily federal government money, state, there's industry money in there as well. Our College of Engineering is one of those top 3 that bring in those dollars, right? And so that research is really important for continuing to spur economic activity, those types of jobs, and then being able to place well-trained, qualified, highly smart students that are graduating from here back into our communities instead of them going elsewhere, right, and seeking jobs in the Bay Area or other states, and same with startups and spinoffs that may come out of that type of research that we have.
Thank you. Renee, I'd like to go to you now, and I'd like to ask, so we've talked about growing tradable sectors and quality jobs coming from the tradable sectors as part of the pathway to a resilient and equitable economy. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what other economic mobility strategies the City of Davis and region could focus on.
Absolutely. I do just want to put a point
Sure,
on
please do.
one thing that's related to that previous question. And if you look at data overall for tradable sectors versus local serving sectors, tradable sectors have a higher job quality index. So that's not to say that there are some local serving sectors like healthcare that have some very significant high-paying jobs for folks that might not have a bachelor's degree. But overall, if you were to compare the 2 different segments, tradable sectors have a higher job quality index. And I think that's really important when you're looking at the mix of jobs that are being created in the city of Davis and in the surrounding region. I also feel the need to just let you all know there's a ton of resources available at weprospertogether.org, which is our regional initiative for inclusive economic development. We've partnered a lot with GSEC also on that research and information and employer interviews, and it really does, there's some clear data there about some assets and strengths we have in tradable sector areas that we could focus on regionally to grow together. So I just wanted to put those 2 points on the last
Thank you so
question.
much. And now we'll transition into that.
Yes.
And can you just say the URL one more time?
We prosper together.
weprospertogether.org. Okay, great. Thank you. And so now dovetailing into, in addition to these opportunities, what other opportunities will help with that resilience in the region?
Absolutely. I think of it this way. Economic development and workforce development have to work really well together. And one of the challenges we sometimes have is economic development is moving faster than workforce development. And so that creates challenges when it comes to having the labor pool to attract the businesses that are always moving and iterating. So this is one of the kind of alignment system issues that we're working on regionally. We prosper together with the partners up here at this table. And so one of the things we for sure need to do is make sure that as we are developing these jobs and expanding them, we're bringing everybody along. And that is why we need our community college partners, all of our partners, to be doing that work. I know earlier in the lunch, I was sitting next to Garth from the Yolo County Office of Education. They do a great job on early kind of certificate programs to expose people to careers. So it's really important that we think about the outreach and access to these jobs. So if you've never conceptualized what biotechnology is, that's not even on your radar as you're going to high school or you're thinking of reinventing yourself after your job just became automated or went away. So we need to be making sure that we're getting the information out about these tradable sector areas that are opportunities for growth for our region, and we're doing it in our K through 12 systems. We're doing it with our nonprofit CDO partners who have access to the populations who need this information the most. And we're doing it with our community colleges and university and other education partners. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Katie, I'm interested because it really struck me what Renee said about economic development maybe being growing at a faster rate than workforce development, right? You've had a lot of experience in different areas. Have you experienced this before? And what does that solution look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, particularly in the tradable sectors, they're always innovating. They're always looking for the next great thing to bring to the market. The next.
We have a new major for that.
Exactly. And so this need to innovate and our consumers' desire for the next, whatever it could be, does create this disconnect. And so being at the table and having these discussions, not only with our educational partners, but I'm going to also mention too, is that having that discussion with those students that are coming straight out of these and looking for either I'm going to go work for a DMG Mori, or I'm going to go work, for Interplant or something like that, where I'm going to go do ag science, or they're going to say I'm going to go build the next bigger fill in the blank, right? And so this disconnect, we have to create these series of links between workforce development and economic development, and it has to be thoughtful, it has to be strategic, it can't be impulsive. You have to develop relationships. One of the things I was talking to my fellow panelists about is the importance of memorializing those relationships. It's great to have MOUs, it's great to have handshake deals, it's even better to have contracts. It's better to have strategic plans. It's better to have joint business plans. It's better to be on the board as these decisions are making. And certainly as we look to what the state's expecting to us, they're recognizing this disconnect. So the governor just recently released the state's economic blueprint. It just happened last week. And one of the things he talks about is this disconnect between jobs that are churning out things in the economy and making sure that our talent pool and our workers that are coming up, and it's not just workers that are coming out of our higher education and high schools, it's workers who are deciding, I've done this for 20 years and I'm going to do something different now. Or I worked for a company and I want to build a better bread box.
Yeah.
And I just would like to point out that, it happens at all levels. It happens, for small businesses, it happens with these big businesses where they're constantly having to try to innovate and create these connections. And so a big part of that is just one, acknowledging that that's an issue, and two, having our regional collaborators. And then I also like to point out, we have local collaborators as well too. So we do have a startup incubator here in Davis. They are looking out for those people that are either coming out straight out of the college or they're on their second career, and they're creating a space, a safe space for them to try to innovate. And so I think that's how some of those connections can occur, is just by continuing those dialogues, staying present at the table, continuing to talk to the businesses. I think one of the things I talked about recently with the council was a business walk is a great place to understand those disconnections, and then to continue to support your startups and to create a safe space for them and a continuum of services that we can offer to do that. And that can be done at the local level, but certainly we have to figure out how to plug in to these other efforts.
Trolls, economic growth and people growth, how do we balance them?
Well, I think as Katie alluded to, you're going to have the demand signal is always going to come from the employer side, right? And that's something that's super important to understand. There's a difference between education and workforce development too. I think that's really critical. Education is about educating people to some level of general understanding of how the world works, and then there's the workforce development component, which can be, by the way, nested within education. They're not like, and I will let our education partners kind of weigh in on this, but I think it's important though, because on the workforce development side, you have to be extraordinarily responsive to demands of employers. And when I say demand, I don't mean, they don't get to show up and just, shake their fist at you and say, this is what you must give me, but more just have an understanding of what needs are in the business community, and then very rapidly be able to iterate to deliver those. I'll give you one local example. We had the fortunate opportunity to work with Bosch on helping them locate the recent investment in Roseville. They're putting $1.9 billion into a semiconductor manufacturing fab up in Roseville. They need to be operational by Q1 of next year. And they need to have ultimately the ability to scale to 800 people in a region that has a relatively small semiconductor manufacturing workforce right now. We have a lot of semiconductor engineering, but not a lot of manufacturing. So that means you have to generate a lot of new talent, if you will, for that. And for that, the community college system in California has been amazing. Sierra College is the local college for that area. They were able to pivot very quickly their mechatronics program, which is basically mechanics and electronics like combined, basically working on robots and knowing how to fix them. And they were able to just graduate the first cohort of folks to support that. And they were able to do that based on a trip we took to Germany in February of last year when we forged some connections between Sierra College and Bosch, and then they started talking about how they could, make this happen for each other. And I think that's an example of how you work really, really well together. The company will come in first, or the company will expand first, and they will try to figure out what they're innovating on. But then the ability to rapidly respond and sort of figure out a way to work with them, that's next level workforce development. And we've got some folks in this region, both on the Los Rios side and at Sierra College and Woodland Community College, Yuba College, et cetera, who are great at doing that. So I think that's the key. And by the way, that just again reinforces the notion that economic development is a team sport at a regional level. Because if you're not at the table, if you don't have those relationships, when a business comes in and starts asking questions, if you have to start making phone calls, then you're already months behind the 8 ball. If you have a plug and play system where everybody just knows how to work together and can pivot as needed, you're going to be very competitive relative to the rest of the world, and that's what you need to be to attract tradable sector companies, many of which, by the way, are small. I want to be super clear. We've been talking about a lot of big companies here. There are a lot of very small companies that are doing very niche stuff. It's 4 to 5 employees. They sell 90% of their stuff outside of the region, or 100% of their stuff outside of the region. They're just as important, but they also have the same kind of mentality where it's like they can do business anywhere.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add about industry partnerships from Sac City?
Well, what's on my mind is how important organizations like GSEC and Valley Vision are, because the education sector systemically really is siloed unless there are players in the region, organizations like yours, cities like Davis with the economic development offices that are helping to drive those conversations and connect industry to education. And that's a great example from up at Sierra College and Roseville. And I think my point is it doesn't come naturally. It has to be, there have to be players in the region who are designing things to make that happen.
Truly. Speaking of which, Kelly, I know the Chancellor just wrote about entrepreneurship at UC Davis. I'm very familiar with a lot of those organizations, and I do think that the university does a wonderful job fostering getting ideas out of the lab and into the market, right? One thing that's been on my mind is just, first of all, how do we continue this in a way that helps grow the people in the economy and keep our graduates here? I think sometimes our graduates kind of move around, right? And part of that is growing the economy, and the people might stay, in my perspective. Curious to hear your thoughts about that, number one. And number two, this is in real time, and it's a little bit of a curve from here, but I keep thinking about, some looming budget cuts, right? And so how does that affect this ecosystem when we're revving this economic engine? We have the people, I think we can get them to stay, and now all of a sudden, what does that look like?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's where my head's been during this conversation. I didn't want to be the Debbie Downer in the room, bringing it up myself. So thanks for that intro. But before we go there, in the last decade, UC Davis has produced 119 startups, right? And there's been about, I want to say 15 million in licensing, royalty, other fees that are coming in from that. So we really are leaning into those things. And you hear about some of these incubators that are happening. And we've got a few that we really work with and try and create, these safe places for our students and for others to really create spin-offs, practice, fail, try again, fail, prove that something didn't work that way, and then third or fourth or 100th time, right, show that it does. And we want to keep them when they make those successes. So those are really key. We are a public research institution. We do very well at this. You heard me cite a number earlier about bringing in $1 billion of external research funding. $441 million of that comes from the federal government. I think we are all aware that we're very uncertain about the state of research funding as well, given some of the different executive orders and policies that we've heard about since January. at the state level as well, right? When we're talking about workforce, right? This is an important thing for us to think about too, as you're working on different advocacy efforts in places. There's a proposed 8% cut to the university's whole system-wide baseline budget. And that really impacts our ability to deliver for our students, for them to get the classes that they need, to graduate on time, the support that they need. There are key programs that we are having to make difficult decisions with on campus right now that are impacting our relationships with cities, with our communities, and how we can show up and partner together in innovative ways. And so it also impacts our operational abilities too, with our staffing levels, being able to provide those fair and living wages that are really important, help uplift, our whole community. And so as we look at those are really serious things for us to figure out, not just as a university, but we talk about the state of the city, the state of our region, the state of our state, and the state of the country, right? I love the analogy, it really is a team sport. And so it's something that we just have to be honest and acknowledge that UC Davis, yes, contributes $1.6 billion directly in its presence here in just in the city of Davis through direct, indirect, and induced spending, which multiplies to just shy of $2 billion just here in Davis. When we look at that more broadly and what those numbers are, I'm going to make sure I get this correct because it is staggering. Mayor Vitla mentioned it earlier where he was at our press release at Aggie Square with some of these numbers, but the university spending generated an economic impact of $13.18 billion statewide. Nearly 2/3 of that is here in this region that we're talking about, right? And that is $9.5 billion in economic impact to the Sacramento metro region, which supports over 61,000 jobs. And when we talk about job multipliers with these different sectors, something to be aware of is there are 10,000 jobs just here in Davis from the university supporting an additional 1,700. And that multiplier effect, if I am remembering correctly from our economic impact analysis, was for every 10 jobs that UC Davis has in our region, there are an additional 7. And so that's one of those things that as we look at our workforce development, it's really important. It's in these multiple sectors, but being realistic about our budgets, about our ability to meet these demands of companies that are coming here, to be able to produce that workforce, especially if we are looking at not having our students be able to graduate on time to meet some of those needs, we have to figure out how to work together as a community in the region to do so.
Kelly, I'm going to keep you on the hot seat for a second. I just want to ask, because we're kind of wrapping up question 3 and we've gone very well into question 5. So we can walk and chew gum and we're going to be creative because you started talking about the economic impact analysis report. And I'm wondering about other findings, anything that the impact report suggested that we can do to further foster opportunities we have from UC Davis in the region, especially given these kind of odd times.
Yeah, it doesn't go into too much detail around that. It's really a look back overall when we look at the fiscal impact analysis, as well as the economic impact analysis. And just to differentiate them, fiscal impact analysis is one of those things that looked at, okay, what type of impact does the university generate in the city and the county where it resides, right? Our students, our faculty, people coming, and how much economic activity do we generate to cover that? What we saw was that the university more than generates enough to cover that, so there's a net fiscal positive impact. And then when we look at those economic development numbers and the impact analysis of what we just shared, those are things that are important for us to keep in mind as we do projections. It's not just the construction and operational spending that really do boost our local and regional economy, especially as we look at projects like Aggie Square, the Innovation District that I'm sure you've heard about multiple times throughout the region in different conversations, and the construction spending we're seeing there, or the estimates of what we're going to see it be able to generate. But that's probably the one area as we do a future forward look at, as that innovation district comes online and the full phases are done, those are the types of things we want to make sure we have that workforce available for locally.
Great. And Troels, I'm thinking that I'm so curious too about like your experience in Portland, right? And the town and gown, but you're also very eager to say something before that. So
well, I was going to actually go back to my experience in Atlanta there because I worked in economic development there as well. Portland is an interesting place. We can go on for days about that, but they actually don't have an R1 university inside of city limits.
Okay, so talk to us about something better.
Georgia Tech in Atlanta
Okay.
is a perfect example, which also happens to be the alma mater of Chancellor May.
Indeed.
And my alma mater, so go Jackets, Ramblin' Wreck all the way. But what's really critical to what Georgia Tech did, actually under the leadership of now Chancellor May when he was dean of the engineering school, is they opened themselves up to the business community in a way that they hadn't done it before by building new assets like what we see with Aggie Square here, but also really, really importantly, they leaned heavily into tech transfer and commercialization. And that's really a big visionary move that Chancellor May has made in his leadership here in Davis. And it's something that I would encourage the city of Davis to really become a partner to the greatest extent you possibly can. Because if you think about it this way, okay, Kelly gave some numbers, and I mean, yes, we are definitely very concerned about what's going on around the overall environment for research spending and research support from the federal government. Even absent that, we're in a situation from a budgetary standpoint in the state of California where there are some really strong headwinds against the UC, against the CSU system, and also to some extent against community colleges. So communities, we're going to have to figure out how to get more quote unquote bang for our buck with the incredible investments and the incredible leadership that our educational institutions are providing. UC Davis is an anchor institution, and it's called an anchor institution. It's kind of a funny thing, but it's kind of called that because it's really hard to move. Okay, it's an anchor. It kind of sits there, right? But so really we have this incredible asset in the city of Davis and in the region that is driving an enormous amount of economic activity. One way we can increase that multiplier effect is by really leaning into tech transfer and commercialization. What does that mean? That basically means, college kids that are going to UC Davis right now, starting their own companies, or faculty and other folks associated with universities spinning out their own research into commercial enterprises and doing it here in the region. And there's a whole model that has been worked all over the world on this, and it's something UC Davis is really leaning into right now. And I think it's a really important move and a really visionary one, because it's going to not only generate jobs in the region and in the city of Davis, it's also going to generate potentially additional revenue for the university that's sorely, sorely needed to fill some of the gaps that are otherwise going to be created. So I think from an economic development strategy standpoint, that's something to really, really lean into. That requires a lot of stuff, and I know we have we don't have a ton of time here, but we certainly look forward to engaging in that conversation. But I do want to emphasize that, just how important UC Davis is, but also how I think they're leaning into some of the right tools right now to try to not push back, but to try to alleviate some of the very real concerns. Some of those obstacles may not be completely overcome, but you can certainly alleviate some of them by doing the right thing strategically here locally.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm just going to do a time check for everybody. We have about 10 minutes left. Katie, do you have a brief comment?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to comment that everything that we're talking about is sort of how these regional partners are working together. And I wanted to just quickly say that despite all of that, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done locally. And so while it's really essential for the city of Davis to engage at the regional level, be there when not only just like as Troll said, when the phone call rings, but know that the phone call is going to ring ahead of time because I helped facilitate the phone call ringing. There's also a lot of work that needs to be done locally to just improve our business climate. We're going to be doing a lot of that through our general plan update. You're going to see a lot of work that's going to be coming out of the work that I'm doing with the economic development strategy to create programs and incentives and other things that are going to be happening. And so I want to just say that I'm so proud of this little panel that we have here, because they're really talking about these very big, visionary, innovative things that are going to greatly improve the region. But that doesn't mean that sort of Davis gets to sit back and go, great, thanks for all your work. And we're just going to sit here and enjoy the benefits of it, because as Trolls pointed out, UC Davis is going to be difficult to ever go anywhere other than here. And we're so irrevocably tied to them. We still have a lot of work to do locally, and I look forward to some maybe future economic development panel series talking about those very specific things. But while it's very easy to get excited about sort of all these regional things, Trolls is correct. There is definitely a lot of work that needs to be done locally to figure out how to leverage and harness those opportunities that our regional players are creating for us. So thank you for letting me have a chance to just plug that in.
Sure. And Jennifer, I want to go back to our environment we're in right now with our budget, kind of future outlook from the Sac City College perspective.
Well, actually, with workforce development, that sector of the community colleges is, at this point, feels a little more sheltered
Okay.
from moves to cut budget. Of course, and we're also in the state of California, which helps, and that's where almost all of California Community College funding comes from, other than some federal grants, some workforce development funds, and also loans for students to be able to go to school. But that said, it's the workforce development curriculum programs feel less on the chopping block than other things. So that's a positive thing for this conversation
And the
region.
tradable sector.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, in the time we have remaining, I'd like to just go through, and Katie, I'm going to start with you and put you on the hot seat. What is one takeaway? Because we're all only going to remember again 10% of what we heard today. And so if you could highlight one takeaway from what we talked about today about growing jobs in the region, with people in and out of the region, right? What would be your sentence that you want us to remember? And the key is it has to be a sentence or else we won't remember.
So I guess my sentence is that Davis has so much to offer the region, and if we create the right mechanisms internally for Davis to receive those benefits, we are going to achieve all of the objectives that the council has requested that we achieve in the economic development strategy.
So we need to create that infrastructure to house those people.
We need to create the infrastructure
And then
necessary.
it sounds like it's push and pull getting there, but we
It
gotta
is.
create the chicken. Okay.
Yes, we got to create the chicken. We've got
Great.
the egg. That's
Great.
correct. That's my sentence.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. Quickly before the sentence, because I
Yes.
think we have enough time, I just want to give some real kudos to Katie and to the city of Davis. And my experience working at the local level 8 years previously, I just want to speak to how important it really is to have strong partners that help them build out sort of the foundation of what we need to do what we do to succeed as partners, right? And so when you hear about that fiscal impact analysis, that's important. When you hear about the state of the city and the infrastructure projects they're working on, while Measure Q, it may be exciting to think about big ideas and what that money could go towards. Having it go towards that deferred maintenance and those other things are essential to provide that type of quality of life in the environment that we keep talking about is really important. So I just want to give some kudos, since it is about the state of the city and we're looking at economic development here, even though it's very porous boundaries, right? And we're speaking as a region. Just thank you for that work and for putting this panel together. And I would be remiss if I didn't also note the excellent leadership of our chancellor, and thank you, Trolls, for raising that, because it really was a bold step forward. I think you all know he is a bit of a Star Trek fan, and so we do want to continue to go boldly into what we can do. And so for my one sentence, I'm just going to go ahead and quote him and something that he shared in some of those releases that I mentioned before that are also available on our website. If you just look up economic impact study and you're curious and look up UC Davis, you'll be able to see those numbers and things there in our presentation. But as he noted when the report was released, our research and innovation help solve some of the world's most pressing problems. And we remain dedicated to strengthening the economy in Davis, in Sacramento, around Aggie Square, and beyond. And we know we can't do that without these types of partnerships and relationships, and being able to know to pick up the phone when you need to, rather than for the first time as an opportunity arises.
Very appropriately, UC Davis has just invested in a new slogan. Does anybody know the new slogan? Outgrow the expected, which is very appropriate. Although I think someday we could make it outgrow the unexpected. All right, go ahead, Renee.
Let's stay very succinct to the sentence. We are all interconnected and we all prosper together.
Love that message from Valley Vision. Thank you very much. All right, Jennifer.
Well, I'll just say my takeaway, in addition to a feeling, which is I feel very hopeful after this and excited after this conversation, is really thinking about workforce development and career education in all places all at once. So, developing a workforce that's coming out, those that are coming out of UC Davis, and then a workforce that keeps our communities healthy. So that's all.
My 10-year-old daughter is so interested, by the way, in early childhood education. I've never seen someone that just chooses to play with little kids, the patience, the games. And I always think when I pass by the Davis campus, I'm like, that would be such a cool place for her to get started. And I'm brainwashing her to stay in Davis forever, and my son. But people tell me that won't last. They say yes now. But all right, go ahead, Trolls.
Hey, she could choose a worse place to stay for life, right?
Right?
Everything everyone here said. Okay, so don't take me as what I'm about to say as the one takeaway. There are 5 takeaways. I would encourage you to take them all down. But the one thing I will say is, really, what you want to do is you want to focus on the fundamentals that drive business outcomes for your city, and that really is critical. And you do that with focusing on tradable sectors, right? Focus on the fundamentals that drive tradable sector business outcomes for your city.
And the ripple effect is also then those local businesses as well.
Comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, you did a great job highlighting that effect, so thank you. All right, well, this wraps us up. We actually have about 5 minutes if we have a question or two. Go ahead, Paul.
Wow, someone's eager. I love it.
He's gonna get his participation points for the day.
Testing, is this thing on? Hello?
Yes.
So Katie, I think you alluded to it right with your final sentence, but fantastic job and very exciting stuff talking about the partnership that education and economic development have together. The leg of the stool that we didn't talk about, and Braden and I were whispering about this back and forth, and I did a quick Zillow research study and just looked at the amount of available housing, and housing is not at the table right now. We did talk a little bit about it next door. There was like 124 available houses right now in Davis, Woodland, and Dixon, and we just slid the map up to a similar geographic map to the area where Bosch is coming in with almost $2 billion, and Oracle's already there, and Intel's there, to Rockland, Roseville, Lincoln, and Antelope, and there were almost 1,000 available houses in that same geographical footprint area.
Such a real question, and just to remind everybody, we have 3 pillars. So we're gonna focus on local business in one of our upcoming series and housing in another upcoming series. But go ahead, keep going.
No, fantastic. That's the leg of the stool that you guys started out with. It's not present today.
Right.
That I know we need to address.
Right.
So my question in that is, I guess how can we as education and business development partner with housing to help create that? I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. But the other thing that I asked Braden is, I'll make it quick. We were talking about that chicken of the local economy. He's like, hey, what's your favorite place to shop in Davis? And he said, I don't know. So what's your favorite place to eat in Davis? I don't know. So we have the farmer's market, we have great community and things like that, but we need a lot more of it. And there's no reason. I love that Davis has a population of 65,000, and I love running into people when I go out to eat and at the hardware store and the grocery store. But there's no reason that we shouldn't be growing, or maybe the city population has this inertia against growth that's preventing us from becoming a geographic powerhouse with 100,000, 250,000 people in this area with thousands and thousands of housing available so that people want to stay here and spend money.
Cool.
here.
We have our panel. We have our list of questions for the next 2 panels. Thank you.
Can I make a small comment
Go
on
ahead
that?
and make a small comment.
What you're talking about is the reason why SACOG has decided that we get an extra amount of the RHNA calculation. So we do not get a proportional amount of growth from a regional perspective. Everything that you just said, it's a great place to live, it's got great schools, there's not enough housing supply. So our regional partners, SACOG, are looking at that going, you need to build more housing.
Sure.
How we do that, we're still working that out. But I just want to acknowledge that when we talked to the demographers at SACOG and said, why are we getting what seems to be more than other cities in the region? Their answer was, because Davis is such a great place to have growth occur in, and we have naturally low VMT. We have job centers in Davis. We're looking at creating more job centers. We have high quality of life. We have high quality standards of living. We have good schools. So they said, if there's a place to grow, it's probably going to be Davis, which is why you get more of the regional growth than the other cities in the region do. Just wanted to add that contextually.
And we are a fast-growing region. Even though population growth has slowed, we're still outpacing that at the state and national level.
That's so true.
Awesome. Councilmember Neville.
Great, thank you. This is a great panel. I'm really excited. I want to follow up on the comment you made earlier about Intel in Portland. I was really intrigued by that. This is going back a long time, but in 1985, I was one of those Intel employees working in Santa Clara when we got the word, we're moving out of Santa Clara, we're splitting the division in half, the manufacturing is going to Folsom, California, and all the rest of you, you software developers, you marketing people, come on up to Portland and we'll persuade you to move up there. And at the time, and it was really interesting because the corporate viewpoint was that in order to be successful up there in Portland, they needed to bring the workforce to Portland.
Yep.
And I didn't go, I stayed here because I really wanted to go to law school here at UC Davis. But I was fascinated by your numbers and what that has sort of the catalyst that Intel has had. So what happened to really bring the workforce there? I mean, not very many people from Santa Clara moved up to Portland back in 1985.
Wow, yeah, I'll try to make it as quick as I can.
You have a minute and a half.
All right, you got it. So let me just say why Intel moved there in the first place. It was because Oregon at the time really focused on the fundamentals to drive tradable sector growth. They had something called single factor apportionment for taxation purposes. They had cheap water. They had a really powerful incentive program that they used called the SIP. Anyway, go on and on and on. They had a great value proposition for Intel. What then happened was Intel co-invested with Portland Community College, which is the local community college up there. They invested a ton of money in Oregon State University, which has become one of the primary educators of semiconductor manufacturing talent on the West Coast, which, by the way, NVIDIA, of course, Jensen Huang went there. So NVIDIA has invested there, HP has invested there. And by the way, NVIDIA and HP are all in Oregon because of Intel, right? So they had to build their own workforce over time. And then the final piece, and I think this is an important lesson for Davis as well, they had a high quality of life. Eventually, they focused a lot on building the high quality of life. Now, the good news is you all have already done that here, so it's going to be fairly easy to attract people on that front. But that's really what they did. And then they became their own university. One of the reasons Intel today is one of the best companies in the world in terms of educating its own workforce is because of what they had to do in Portland to do that. So I'll stop there.
No, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It is. It is. All right. Final question for the day. What does a cow make in an earthquake? In honor of Davis.
Milkshake.
Yep. All right. Good. Everybody gets an A. All right. Very nice. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our panelists.